Isang makaagam na hapon po sa ating lahat. So, thank you, Dr. Ligot, for that insightful presentation. Now, once again, let us acknowledge our distinguished speakers for presenting their valuable perspective on advancing integrated data and analytics system for smarter governance. So, may I invite our speakers, ASEC Rodolfo Calzado Jr., Engineer John Chris Kwong, and Dr. Dominic Ligot to join me here so that we can have a further discussion on the forum that we just had. So the session, take a seat please. So the session just highlighted a significant reality. The needs of our society change rapidly. Diba sabi nga, AI very fast. And innovation alone, however, is not enough. We need to sustain, scale, and institutionalize the technologies to transform them into national capabilities that can assist governance that is backed by scientific evidence, disaster resilience, digital transformation, and deliver inclusive public service. Through the presentations, we have seen how initiatives like the GATES program, together with the DOST-ASTI efforts and interagency collaborations, are shaping a more connected, data-driven, and responsive governance ecosystem for our country. Now, let me go through our first discussion point. I would like to throw this question to ASEC Calzado. Beyond technological preparedness, what do you think are the biggest barriers preventing the wider adoption and institutionalization of integrated data system in the Philippines today? That is in the perspective of national level development, cooperation, and governance. What do you see as the most pressing barriers? Especially we are talking about interoperability and integrated systems.
Thank you, Engineer Nina. Well, first of all, just to clarify, I think what I can give perhaps is the perspective from the public sector.
Okay.
On what are these. If I would put a finger on the biggest barrier, there are many barriers. Number one is the inability of my mic to be able to. And a close number two would be, if I was to choose one, I would say it's the lack of focus on the value, or what is the value proposition of integrating these data systems. Because sometimes we get too lost in the governance aspect of it, and being careful about ethics of AI, etc. And sometimes we lose focus on why are we doing this in the first place? Why are we governing the way that we are integrating our data systems in the first place? And one solution that the DOST is really focusing on is to highlight this value through actual use cases that utilize said integrated data systems. And this value would be highlighted further if there was clarity on how we achieve such value through the integration of data systems. So maybe my point is that I think government as a whole, there needs to be a paradigm shift from the perspective, oh, we need to start governing AI because of so-and-so dangers, to what is the value of AI? And from there on, after identifying the value, how do we manage the risks that come in using AI to generate said value? So those are my answers. Thank you.
Okay, so to add on to the question, so you said add value on that and a government perspective. So if we are going to look at GATES and you are to pitch 1 to 2 sentences on that value, what value is that?
For GATES?
Yes, for GATES.
I think number one is clarity. It provides clarity. And number two, it provides operational and practical experience. Because it's one thing to theoretically think about it, and it's another thing, which the GATES is doing, to actually do what we are claiming in theory would be beneficial for us. Because in the GATES program, Kwong is aware of this, in the GATES program, we are in the process of really actually interoperating the different data sets of our different agencies. And I can tell you about the challenges that we're facing right now. There's the human aspect of it. There's also the aspect of how complex these data sets are. And of course, the mapping and the amount of data, security, etc. But I'm happy to at least for now report that we have successfully done it for two of our main agencies, which for climate and disaster, which is on Pag-asa and FIVOX. So we have managed to develop the fully functioning model that we are using right now for one of our use cases, which is Handa. So again, going back to that, it's clarity as well as the actual operational value and experience being presented.
Okay, thank you, Asek Calzado. Maybe Engineer Kwong could add to that, especially on the technological developers and researchers' point of view. What gaps do you commonly observe when scaling these systems, and so that the stakeholders could really see the value of the system that we are developing?
Thank you po, no? Test. Okay. Ayan. So, primarily po, the gaps, or most of the gaps, aren't technical in nature. It's more of what will happen to my data, the security of my data. These data sets are from agencies that are experts in their field. So they want to make sure, they want to ensure that their data is properly used, is properly interpreted, and also the necessary controls for the data or for the systems that are being shared. So this is why when we're designing the infrastructure, specifically yung na-mention the GATE Federated Data Lakehouse, is that we always take into account what our stakeholders or what our users, the DOST family, would like to come off from the data sharing that is going to happen in GATE. So this is GATE is a part of a bigger picture in where all of us are working together to ensure that yung gaps na yun will not hinder us from creating an integrated, interoperable system.
Okay, thank you, Engineer Kwong. Dr. Ligot, from the ecosystem and user perspective, especially kanina you talk about governance, you talk about policy. So how do you think the institution can better address these roadblocks, especially those mentioned by Engineer Kwong? There's already the issue of trust and the issue of safety and security.
Sige. My view here, from I'll continue the story earlier. No? So, Mr. Ligot, do you have a medical background? No. And wala, DOH just blanked out. The solution we proposed to them, if some of you still remember, was we used satellite data to identify what areas on the ground are highly likely to have mosquito habitats. And then using naman, time series data from the internet, trained it against dengue cases, we could then predict with maybe a 1 or 2 month look ahead when dengue will likely spike. So imagine yun, integrated system. But then I realized we were trying to pitch a geospatial, time series, statistical model to clinical experts, yung mga clinicians who don't really care about that. They look at symptoms, they look at triage. So the point I'm trying to make is, even if it works, in theory, if it works, it works. Pero you have to consider, I guess, the background, the traditions of the people you're trying to pitch to. And more importantly, I'm going to generalize. If you're pitching to someone who crafted their career, let's say before the year 2000, mga 1990s, 1980s, 1970s, remember how primitive data was at that time. Data kasi is an outcome of your decision. It doesn't drive your decision. So lalabas na yung mga iho-iha conversations. Na iho, long before this data stuff, we've been doing it by gut feel. Now, the good thing is, everyone dies eventually. So, eventually these, and I know by now, millennials na yung nagpapatakbo ng karamihan na agency. Couple of Gen X like me, the boomers are mostly retired, playing golf. And then eventually it will be Gen Z. So you will have now the completely opposite problem of people believing data lang. And they don't care to check anymore. No? Parang, and that's what's happening with AI now. Parang sinabi lang ni Gemini, maniniwala na yung mga tao. We'll have the opposite problem. So it's still the same. You have to cater your message to that phenomena. And again, be mindful. one thing that actually what we presented to DOH was a precursor of what Gates is trying to do, which is multimodal data analysis. Imagine you combine a health data set with a geospatial data set with a digital data set. Because at the end of the day, you know naman human behavior moves in the same trend. Eh. Parang dati, wala dito sina Dr. Legara and Monterola. They had research in Singapore where they converted streets into networks, if you're familiar with network analysis. And yung networks predicts other phenomena like crime rate, yung mga centrality, yung spread of COVID, predicted by a network. Try explaining that to a clinician. No? They don't believe that, mga hugis ng kalsada will predict where diseases will spread. No, they want to get other kinds of proof like your blood test. So it's essentially cultural and scientific silos you're breaking. And data is probably the best entry point. But remember, people own that data then. So you have to also break that silo. So hopefully, Gates will thrive. You get past all of these silos. Silo talaga eh. Once you're there, the value will speak for itself. Just like, I think our R squared on predicting dengue was 94.5%. Imagine mo yun, almost perfect. And yet, ayaw pa rin ng DOH. They'd rather wait for ERs to max out before they declare a pandemic. No? It's still a kind of a heartbreak for me kasi ando na, dala ko na si WHO, dala ko na si UNICEF. Imagine mo, mga blue logos kami lahat. Ayaw pa rin kasi hindi ako totoong medical doctor. So, lesson learned, I'm gonna bring a medical doctor next time I pitch these things. Sorry, mahaba yung
So parang
explanation.
pag tinanong pala kita kung uulitin natin yan, anong una mong gagawin?
I'm sure the Gates data has that already. In
Okay.
fact, this is pre-PhilSA. Si Dr. Marciano was still in ASTIBA or Pedro at that time. And I remember when PhilSA was launched, that was one of the first use cases. Kasi they started predicting GDP based on night lights. Di ba? May mga ganong use cases. Doon nakita bigla na, this satellite and geospatial data actually predicts pala stuff on their own. Sabi ko malamang because that's generated by humans. No? But again, it's really silos. No?
Okay, so,
I would love to meet that DOH person
so
one
parang
day.
you're saying we really need to generate more use cases for the people to believe.
You have to win-
this
you have to
really
win them over.
Yeah,
Win
we
them
have
over.
these things really happens. No. So before I move to the next question, are there any thoughts that you would like to share regarding these barriers that are not really technological in nature? No more? So I think we have discussed it already. So for the second question is on integrated governance depends heavily on collaboration and data sharing among institutions. So with this in mind, Engineer Kong, how can agency ensure the protection of data while maintaining interoperability, institutional mandates, and cybersecurity?
Hi, thank you, ma'am. Sige po. In Gates kasi, what we're trying to do in our design is that we are not making or we are not forcing the agencies to choose between data security, meaning keeping your data safe in your own silos or servers, and making it available for collaboration or for other agencies to use. We're not forcing them to choose one over the other because we can actually do both. No? This is one of the things in the design of a federated data lakehouse in that the data can still be at the agency's own infrastructure, but can be accessed by a central or a consolidated infrastructure, which Gates is trying to be, for others to be able to access or for us to be able to share to others as well. So, yung next part na lang dyan is how are we going to address making sure that that line in between is secure. Then hopefully, I'm not sure how to answer that now, but hopefully, by the end of the program, we can get a definitive process, workflow, or a stack, or procedural, or governance that could address our requirements in terms of cybersecurity and to also help or to also address each of our own institutional mandates din po.
Okay. So, ASEC Calzado and Dr. Ligot, may we also hear your perspective on how this can be achieved at both the policy and implementation level?
Maybe a blind spot, maybe just recalling my mga past horror stories, no? When you look at traditional IT naman, when I say traditional, again, pre-2000, no? Ang traditional IT, when you talk about data, their focus will be on storage. So when you talk about data access, Can I query that database? Pero to make these kinds of apps happen, that's only kind of the first layer, diba? You have to do the modeling, you have to do the prediction. And that means traditional IT, I'm generalizing, they don't necessarily understand or care about that next level. So what am I coming at? When you design interoperability, don't just cover storage. Kasi yun yung pinaka-common na issue eh. Also cover the modeling, cover the inference, and even the publication of the results. That should be part of the data sharing. Kasi remember, once na-train na yung model, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, you don't need the storage anymore. The model can predict. And actually, that has its own nuance then. Even if you don't name the people, you can, in a way, reverse engineer a model to generate the records, no? Especially with generative AI. And I think we never had to deal with those kinds of issues in the past. Kasi it's all about security lang of the storage. So I think that, I mean, it's just one of 100 issues you'll encounter. But remember, all of our laws were written even before, like before 2012, data didn't really appear in any law, the word data. No, it's not even in the Constitution. And then 2012, may Data Privacy Act, may Cybercrime Law. Suddenly, laws had to contend with data. So even our legal frameworks are not designed for a data society. So, but again, I think little by little, we're trying to address that. There's the AI bill, there'll be AI-driven laws, no? But just be mindful of that blind spot. Now, when data security ang usapan, they only normally think of the storage. In fact, the whole issue about data sovereignty is still storage. For me, it doesn't matter where the data is stored. Now, yung AI sovereignty, ibang usapan. Where is the model located? Can it be accessed cheaply? And more importantly, does it reflect our cultures and values? Wala na si Prof. Naval. He wants to argue for AI, sovereign AI. Yun ang reason to have high-end mathematicians. You're just going to use Meta and OpenAI. Ano lang yan, mostly API lang yan eh. But if you're going to develop your own sovereign AI, medyo it's a serious discussion. No? Again, those policies don't exist yet.
Okay, Asek, Rod, do you have anything to
Thank
add?
you. Well, just to make it quick, because I saw the huge 10 minutes remaining. But yeah, most have been said by my colleagues already. But maybe just to, something that I can add to the conversation is how deep we are going into not just mapping, but also understanding and appreciating the data sets and the people behind these data sets. Because we cannot, while we are working towards the standardization of for the data sets that we are currently covering under the GATES program, we ensure that we have a conversation because the domain experts are really with the agencies. The ones who are holding the data are the experts. So they know what we can and cannot do to the data set. So it's important that we don't approach this in a sort of like a tyrannical way, I would say. Not only from the human perspective, but also from the operational and practical perspective, because it will pose security risks if we make decisions that are uninformed by the realities on the ground about these data sets.
Okay, thank you, Asek Rod. Now, the next question is, even the most advanced technologies will only be effective if institutions have people with the right skills and capacity to manage and sustain them. With this, what steps should the government, academe, and industry prioritize to develop a future-ready workforce capable of supporting advanced technologies and data-driven governance? Maybe we could start with Dr. Ligot, then
Yep.
Asek Rod.
Ako, I have a very important message, no. Ito sa DepEd naman to, and SHED and TESDA. I think we conflate the need for specialists with the need for literacy. Literacy is everyone. When you say AI literacy, it doesn't mean everyone has a PhD. Impossible. Specialists, certainly you need high-end. They're equally important. Pero pag sinabi kasing, what do we do by creating a workforce? I think that's closer to literacy than specialists. Or maybe it's level 1 and level 2 literacy. And then depende na sa vertical if they want to specialize. No? Like, okay, everyone is literate. What does a banking professional need to know about AI? What does a semiconductor professional, etc.? The problem is when it comes not to fora like this, and I'm not, it's not an indictment of ASTICON, it's many fora, napupunta bigla sa specialist training. We need to boot up these centers, produce more masters and PhD. I think the subtle issue there, and some of you might have heard me say this, where are the teachers? If you can't even mass produce teachers about AI, then who's going to train them? No? YouTube. Hirap yan, di ba? So I feel those are the missing pieces of the education strategy. You'll have a literacy track, you'll have a specialist track, but you need a teacher track. In fact, I would argue nga you need a leadership track. Kasi remember, you're gonna be pitching this to someone with a budget. Malay ba nila what you're trying to do? So I think those are four important tracks if you want me to parang prioritize. No?
Okay.
I don't know if it's too late by now, no? Pero 2017 sinasabi ko na yan. Pero yeah, it's still the same message.
So, thank you, sir. So, Engineer Kong and Ase Calzado, on the point of view of research, implementation, and policy, how are we going to address the right skills? Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that, Engineer. So, well, first of all, I would say overall, it is important to upskill, but we have to be also cognizant of what are the gaps that we're intending to fill and what are the opportunities that we're trying to, take. So when we identify these human resource investments, they should address real gaps. And that means that we have to democratize the training that we are doing for artificial intelligence. Why is that? Because a lot of stuff, just for example, the common si Aling Maria at Mangwan, they do not know how to maximize the opportunities that artificial intelligence provides. But at the meantime, bigger companies are already thinking of, AI is so efficient, we have to, we can move half of our workforce and just utilize AI to make things more efficient. Then where does that leave the other half? All of these people that should be benefiting from the artificial intelligence revolution. So I think there are many gaps that we can fill, but from my perspective, we should target those that are most affected or adversely affected by the AI revolution. And without talking about AI, this has been a problem ever since, even with the digital transformation revolution. There's something that we call the digital divide. And during that time, I'll just give a concrete example. Kunwari, pardon me, Tagalog na ng konti. Pero, for example, there's a coastal community and everyone, the mayor sees that, everyone can vote online already. It's so efficient. Around 80% of the population already has smart cell phones. Pero the problem is, where does that leave the minority and the vulnerable? It's the same here. When we do upskilling for artificial intelligence, we have to be very strategic about that. Under the NAIS-PH, we are here to support that process as the DOST, but there are lead agencies identified for each of these. I think the private sector was identified as one of the leads together with, if I recall correctly, parang TESDA ata, tsaka DOLE ata, in terms of the labor. Pero I think that is something that we should be more strategic about and think carefully about. Thank you.
Okay, so maybe I could go on to the fourth discussion point. On a global scale, countries are rapidly investing in AI, smart systems, and advanced analytics. As we look towards the future, how can our country remain competitive and collaborate in the global digital and innovation landscape while still addressing local realities and development needs? Maybe we could start with Engineer Kwong.
Okay. Siguro po, maybe we can, or how do I frame this? How do we remain competitive and collaborative in the global digital and innovation landscape while we are still addressing yung local realities and development needs? So, siguro I'll respond this with what we are doing in the program or in the project po. So, what we're trying to do is we are not trying to, again, silos ourselves in the program lang. We're trying to extend an arm, a leg, to other agencies, be it DOST or externally, outside of the DOST, in any way possible, be it in capacity building, be it in knowledge sharing, be it in sharing of resources or sharing of models as well, or researchers. Because at the end of the day, even if, let's say, the global landscape advances, and then if we advance or a portion of us advances, there's still a portion of us that will get left behind. And it is not in any way beneficial to us na naka-advance, if that makes sense. Po, ano? So, in our own little way po sa program, that's what we're trying or what we're striving to do. So, I hope that helps.
Okay, yeah.
Ako, for you, just to double down on the digital divide, one thing that compounds is AI is dependent on internet, unfortunately. However, kanina sa Caraga use case, pinagmalaki ni Regional Director, he's got this RTX 5090 sa office niya. That's actually edge AI. And I think that's something this room can do. Yes, many, GIDA, we call it GIDA, di ba? GIDA sites don't have internet connection. Pero kung may kuryente at may mga router, you can deploy edge AI. So I feel that it's a workaround because we're unfortunately dependent on another department for connectivity. Ibang event siguro yon pag-usapan natin. But if you're not internet enabled, you can still benefit from AI by deploying localized AI models, no? If I'm sure some of you are playing with Olama, I think Olama is luma na nga eh. It allows you to create a harness within a powerful PC. Deploy those things, no? So I feel creativity lang ang kalaban eh. And again, same with the issue earlier, we don't have policies written for edge AI either. So we should write them, no? I think that's within the control of everyone. Para hindi tayo masyadong dependent. The internet connectivity will come when it will come. If you're in BGC, wala kang problema. But if you're in those GIDA sites, deploy na tayo doon. Short of getting a Starlink internet, medyo mahal. But I think it's cheaper to just deploy an edge server. Let's figure it out, no? Yeah, I think that's top of my head, a scientific and engineering life hack that can then enable so many things. Kasi once may edge ka na doon, lahat na ng mga apps na to gagana na. You just have to worry about the data storage and security. Yeah, just a thought.
Okay, one more. Yeah.
Well, for me to remain, well, I think first of all we have to determine where we are where we place. Are we, and how do we define being competitive? What is our level of ambition? Because we have to be aware that we are not competing at the global stage for the most most resource intensive AI applications like the US for the ChatGPT, etc., or China for that matter. And I think one of our advantages is that developments that are already democratized at a global level, we can already leverage and utilize to, as Doc Ligot mentioned, localized AI, to generate or develop localized AI applications that really benefit our constituents, which is the Filipino people, and of course empower as the government. I would always return to the idea that we should see ourselves as enablers. Enablers meaning bring these advantages to the people, make it closer to them. That's why we're working on the NICRI, that's why we're working on the GATES program. We want to empower our co-national government agencies as well as local businesses at the grassroots to be able to take advantage of all these latest advancements in AI and not get left behind. I think that's the true advantage that we have, and that should be our metrics in terms of remaining competitive. How much value are we consistently able to extract out of the latest developments of AI? We don't need, at least from my perspective, we don't need to compete or say, oh, we have to get the best scientists in the world that are able to craft the most sophisticated artificial intelligence applications. We really have to go back to the value.
Okay, thank you po. So the final question for this panel is that how can we ensure that integrated data initiatives deliver measurable public value and remain sustainable beyond pilot stages, leadership transitions, or even changes in funding priorities? Ikaw muna, Asik.
This is a very difficult question because this has been one of the largest problems that we have been from the very beginning, that we tried to ideate when we were just developing the roster of different big ticket programs of the department under, of course, the instructions of Secretary Solidum. But what we found, based on our, of course, Doc Ligot mentioned a while ago, we have to look at our mistakes from the past, and we really intently looked at what we did wrong as government in the past. And it seems to us that we have been, for the longest time, claiming, every government agency claim, oh, we have the silver bullet to solve data interoperation, focusing on the actual act of and the necessity to interoperate without forgetting to highlight what is the actual value of this interoperation. We've been criticizing each other. Hindi kayo nag-share ng data, hindi kayo nag-ano. But at the end of the day, when you look at it, the argument will never end. And the solution of the DOST, perhaps we can summarize it into two very simple modalities. The first is we have to show practical outputs that work using interoperated data. We are fortunate as a Department of Science and Technology that we are blessed with so many different agencies with so much data and not only abundance, the diversity of the data sets that we have. It makes us the perfect laboratory, so to speak, to come up with this model that could be potentially scaled up at the national level. And perhaps the second is that apart from, of course, the very strong leadership of our Secretary Renato Solidum pushing for this, is that we are also looking at now beginning to explore non-traditional ways of fund generation in order to fund our multi-year programs and projects. So that means that we are going beyond the traditional way of doing things as the DOST. And we have been doubling our efforts to show our impact in terms of economic development. And so perhaps those are my two answers.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, good. Can you add something?
Well, this might be controversial, but I think we're either too wrapped up with the national government and then the local government does their own thing. I think that's by design. Baka the exit strategy for many of these projects is to spin off an NGO or a non-profit or even a for-profit. Parang build, operate, transfer. Baliktad yung flow natin eh. You want to get startups so that they can get integrated to central. Okay naman yun, but obviously you know how slow that can get. So baka the idea is, this is just my thought, DOST has the know-how, the knowledge, the scientists, but then if you look at each region na lang or each province, the goal should be to spin off smaller agencies na not necessarily part of government anymore, self-sustaining, that will then cater to their needs. No? And I don't think we've ever had a model like that. O baka meron, mga one-off. Kasi pagdating kasi sa startups, biglang puro e-commerce na lang, puro payments na lang. Parang sabi ko, okay, but I can already go to Lazada for that. So why do I need another Lazada, di ba? O baka I need a Lazada pero satellite data yung bibiling ko. Or I don't know, something like that, no? So I feel that we need to be more creative. Kasi when you say survive the pilot leadership, lalo na leadership, every new administration, you'll never know what positions get shuffled and nagre-rego dun yung projects. That's already an occupational hazard. So you try to hedge that by making sure the project survives beyond that structure. Anyway, if you want to talk about that, you know where to find me.
Engineer Kwong?
Hi, sige po. So maybe I'll try to connect my response with what Doc Ligot and what ASEC Rod previously mentioned po. No? In that, a lot of the projects that have gone and is or ongoing or have gone are, let's say, hindi na sustain. But there are also projects that have been sustained, that were implemented long ago and are still here up and running. This is what I mentioned, Gates is not built on zero. It's built on top of those projects that were proven before. So that's something that also, aside from looking at what didn't work, why it wasn't able to sustain, why did these projects were able to sustain? So maybe we can learn something from that. And maybe as one of the paths, like as Doc Ligot mentioned, we can go to either a startup or a spin-off, but also in the government's aspect, how maybe we can learn from those projects that are still being utilized, being still run or sustained now. What happened, or like, how is it still being or up and running when it was like 20 years ago? Paano? Parang ganun. So maybe that's something that I'd like to pose, siguro, not as an answer, but a question more of na, maybe that's something that we can look into.
Okay.
Can I add lang, meron palang isang quote-unquote, success story. NOAA. Noah survived DOST and is now in UP. Of course, mahabang usapan how it works now. No? But maybe we need more of those things. Like look for state universities who can inherit some of these projects and then sila na mag-sustain. Again, it's yan ang change management kanina, sabi ni MIT. Change management is the #1 reason these projects will die. Kasi nga, it cannot be pilot forever. And let's face it, you get a grant, GIA grant, ano pa ba, Goddess grant. May ano yan may terminal date. And you don't want it to die on the terminal date. Kailangan yung sustainability strategy. Baka school is a less controversial, total marami academics naman sa atin, reason. Ang politics lang dyan, lalo na if you go to regions, hindi lang isang school. No? So that's a different discussion altogether.
Okay, thank you very much for that very valuable discussions. Due to time constraints, so we need to end this discussion. And of course, I would like to thank ang ating magagaling na panelists, Dr. Ligot, si ASEC Rod, and Dr. Kong. So as we conclude this session, today's discussion has highlighted that technology alone cannot create a smarter governance. It also requires strong collaboration across institutions to transform data into actionable knowledge for evidence-based governance. This strengthens the very theme of ASTICON 2026. Sustaining and scaling national capabilities requires not only innovation, but also strong partnerships, interoperability, and a shared commitment to serving the Filipino people. So on behalf of the organizers, I would like to extend our sincerest thanks to our distinguished speakers. Let's give them a round of applause. And of course, to all of you who really patiently listened to the discussion, and I hope you have picked up a lot from their brains. Magandang hapon po, and thank you very much.